So, kind of a quick recap. My family situation's still weird. My mom's back home with my dad at this point. I'm in NorCal. I'm living with like housemates. End up getting my own place with my ex, and yeah, that's kind of like the state of generally where things are. My brothers are both kind of out of the house at this point too, and I talk to them very, very rare, sparingly. Kind of all have our own lives at this point. So, it's been a few years. It's been almost 2 years, well, a year and a half that I've been with my ex at this point, and at the top of the year, my dad just shows up. And the caveat to that is I have been having issues with my car, and as my dad would call to check in, like that would be something he would want to know how his car was doing, and so I'd give him updates on his car. So car had been having issues, and so I guess they just decided to come up. And at this point, I don't really know what's going on too deeply with my parents. But in that visit, I find out, as my dad's dealing with car stuff, my mom is basically like showing me her hands and kind of how she's been having, issues with the new medications that she's on for treatment, and that, doctors switching her to something different. And, it doesn't seem like it's going in a bad direction. Like she's like positive at this point that, she's getting treatment, and, it doesn't sound like it's dire, right? And so I'm not too worried. But she also shares at this point that my dad has, basically reverted back to his old ways, where he's just very antagonistic and very, critical of her. He's waking her up in the middle of the night and kind of, running through all the things that she's doing wrong again. And, she's feeling very unsupported. And, at this point, I was probably a bit harsh, looking back, and I was kind of like, what did you expect, right? This is kind of his pattern, right? Like this is just the way that he is, right? And there's not going to be any changing to that. And yeah, that was kind of one of the last conversations that I had, like with my mom, one-on-one. They also were there to do stuff together, so they go off to like casino and stuff of that sort. But they don't know about my ex at this point. They don't know that I'm seeing someone. They don't know that I'm living with them. And I didn't really want to have that conversation with my parents. And so I basically like didn't tell them anything. And my ex was okay with that, because he was very much of the mindset of like, yeah, I don't want to really meet your family in that situation. It doesn't sound like it's a good situation. And he was more than happy to stay away. So yeah, they helped me get my car fixed, and then they leave. And then, for me, it's just kind of regular. I'm doing my work, and, I'm enjoying my relationship. Like, I think we're pretty serious at this point, like spending more time together. Obviously, we have the place together. And I get a call out of the blue in May of that year, basically from my dad, saying that my mom is in the hospital and that they're probably going to put her in hospice. And I'm just like, whoa, wait a second, what do you mean hospice, right? Like, what's going on? So come to find out that the treatment was not working, and her cancer progressed really rapidly. And she was basically at that point, when they're putting her in hospice, that she wasn't going to make it. I didn't know like how quickly things would progress, but obviously I'm very distraught. I did not know that my mom was sick this whole time. She really hadn't said throughout the time that her treatment wasn't working, wasn't progressing. Like, there was no updates other than I get a call that my mom's in the hospital, right? So I'm in shock. And my partner, my ex at the time, was very much kind of like hands off. It was kind of like, well, that's your family, you need to deal with that. And obviously at this point I had met his family. Like, I had gone to like Christmas and holiday stuff with him and his family. And so it hurt a bit, but I kind of understood because I had also been part of this conversation of like hiding him from my family. And so he really didn't want to like go, which I understood, but then on the other sense, he wasn't very supportive. So I have travel anxiety. I mentioned that earlier. And so, you know, I was going to have to, you know, go down there by myself, and I was obviously very distraught. And so it was just not a good mental space for me to be driving solo. And so I asked him if he would come with me and help me, and he would not take the time off work. He said that he had to work and that he couldn't get the day off, and basically left me on my own. So I ended up calling a really good friend, the same friend that I stayed with her family when I first moved up there, and she actually, you know, took time to actually go with me and drive me down. Unfortunately, it did not get there in time before my mom passed away. And so I think I have a lot of grief about that still, that I wasn't able to overcome my anxiety to make it down there in time. So yeah, and my partner at that time, my ex, didn't support me. So obviously after my mom passed away, my friend brought me down. She unfortunately wasn't able to stay long enough for the funeral, and like I didn't have a car down there, and I didn't feel comfortable like driving or traveling by myself, and I just knew there wasn't going to be anyone in my family that was going to want to do that for me. And so I actually didn't go to my mom's funeral, and that's part of a strain that like ended up happening in my dad and my relationship. Like he was very upset that I did not stay for the funeral. And looking back, like I was not emotionally in a good place and not stable, and you know, my mom was gone at that point. A funeral really didn't change anything other than, you know, having that process of the grief, which I ended up doing like separate another time, like on my own. Yeah, my dad, when my mom passed away, was incredibly distraught. He just did not want to accept the reality that she was gone, and had a really difficult time after that. And so the next couple years were just really difficult with my dad because he was already ill. I don't think I mentioned this before, but my dad was diabetic, and so he had underlying health issues. He had also had a major heart attack when I was in high school. I don't think I mentioned that either, in relation to him being permanently disabled and not working. So he had a lot of health issues too, right? And so I think it kind of also maybe triggered something for him and mortality. But my dad just kind of, like, my relationship there like was always estranged after that. And like he would call every once in a while. I would not call because, you know, my dad's still maintained his personality. He did not change even after my mom passed away, where he's still very controlling and manipulative. And so my strategy was to kind of avoid that relationship as much as possible. And because he had a lot of health problems, he wasn't able to drive. So he didn't really do a lot of driving long distance. So me being in NorCal was kind of like a safe space for me to stay up there away from him. And honestly, at the time, I had a lot going on in my relationship, and I'll talk about that more in the next video.